Okay, good morning, everyone. We will begin the program at 10:05. So we have 2 minutes left. Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming to today's webinar. This webinar is organized by the Philippine Association for Chinese Studies, and it is about cross-strait relations, convergence and divergence. I'm John Robert Go, Assistant Professor from the University of the Philippines, and I will be the moderator for this morning. Today we have two distinguished speakers who will be speaking about the topic of our webinar. And without further ado, let's proceed with the first speaker for this morning. We have Dr. Mignon Man-Jung Chan. She earned her PhD in political economy from Boston University and has extensive experience in academia, government, business, and media. And she will be talking about the different dimensions of the cross-strait relations, so the areas of convergence and divergence. Let us welcome Dr. Chan. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you very much for your kind invitation. Today, my topic will cover a few areas. Do you have the PowerPoint online, or it doesn't matter? Can you hear me?
We have a copy of the PowerPoint.
Sure, no problem. So the content of my report today will cover basically two big areas. One, I call it roles taken and not taken, commonality with variation. I will cover 4 dimensions: cultural, economic, political, and social dimensions. The second part, I will sort of explore ways forward and ask the question of convergence and divergence. So on the cultural dimension, I will cover some commonality and variation across the strait, meaning between mainland China and Taiwan. So on the cultural dimension, there's the commonality is about Chinese cultural inheritance. And our value system basically is embedded in 3 particularly most influential ideology, which is Confucianism, Buddhism, and Taoism. And I will not go through the details unless it's necessary under Q&A. But basically, this forms up our value system across our social system, social structure and belief system, right? It has a very different worldview, as opposed to those that I accumulated when I studied in the United States. Now, in terms of cultural exchange, all right, cross-strait relationship have so far come to the point of we strongly believe that cultural exchange comes first. It is an approach to touch people's heart to heart, not just handshake, hand to hand, or not just sitting in a negotiation table with mouth to mouth, but rather the first step toward it is a heart to heart, human touch and exchange of ideas and different worldviews. Now, there's some diversion as well, variation I like to point out. All right, we all heard about Cultural Revolution during the mid-60s and early 70s in mainland China. But right now, they are talking about cultural great rejuvenation, all right? Whereas Taiwan, having the advantage during the 60s and 70s, while China undergone cultural revolution, we were preserving, so to speak, the Chinese inheritance with a very special touch in Taiwan. Unfortunately or fortunately, and it depends on where you stand, Taiwan is actually currently experiencing the so-called cultural revisionism with a change of historical textbooks and so on, with the current government's approach to so-called de-Sinicization, sort of departing from all the Chinese cultural threat and inheritance, and trying to rewrite the history with a slight variation, meaning that we have nothing to do with the mainland China. Now, let me move to the economic dimension. The second slide, please. I will also touch upon commonality and variation. All right. The commonality across the strait is that we both have active state roles in our economic policy making. Every 5 years, mainland China have the so-called 5-year plan, orchestrating from top-down planned economy. Whereas in Taiwan, accumulated most was American and European economic system. So we actually have a hybrid of top-down and bottom-up, sort of market-oriented economy as well as planned economy. Now, another commonality and variation is the ECFA across the strait that was signed under President MAN-JUNG, and that's Economic Cooperation Framework Agreement across the strait. We see it fit that in addition to the cultural linkage, we can slowly promote cross-strait economic cooperation in good spirit. So there we had the industrial tariff discussion, agricultural, but unfortunately, when it comes to the service cooperation, Taiwan experienced some of the disruption with Taiyanghua, the sunflower movement. And then it brought the LY, the legislative yen, and therefore is stored in the service agreement. But generally speaking, Taiwan and mainland China remain sort of enacting ECFA in the tariff area, but not service. Now move to the next slide. I will talk a little bit about the political dimension that covers some commonality and variation. Next slide, please. All right. So our commonality across the strait is both enjoy ideology of Dr. Sun Yat-sen, 3 principles of the people. So these 3 principles are 民有、民治、民享. It coincides somewhat with the idea of governance of the people, by the people, and for the people. However, we do have our variations in our political system, including the way we select our leadership. In the mainland China, the principle is basically democratic centralism. Now in Taiwan, basically it's based on the American style of electoral system. However, it is sort of a hybrid between US system and British system. It's neither a pure congressional 3-power of balance, nor the really British parliamentary system. So it is a hybrid and in between. Now, the political system area, the variation across the strait, one would like to use the term socialism with Chinese character, whereas Taiwan also always prides itself of the democracy. Of course, we have different stages of democracy, from infant states, teenage states, and right now, not really a mature state, but struggling to be aspired to the so-called democracy. Now, I'd like to talk a little bit about 92 consensus. Of course, 92 consensus within Taiwan is being accepted at different levels with different interpretation within our domestic variants as well, with different parties, all right? So the 1 country, 2 systems basically is the foundation of mainland China's way of operation. But due to the fact of Hong Kong being depicted one way or another with different perception, some Taiwanese dread to think about it 1 country, 2 systems, by intention or by ignorance. Now, 92 consensus in Taiwan up until Ma Ying-jeou's era, before Tsai Ing-wen's era, and by the end of Ma Ying-jeou's governance, it is named as the anchor, the foundation of the cross-strait relations. However, up to that time, we always call 一国, 一个中国, 1 country with different interpretation. That is 1 China with different interpretations. And of course, everybody is familiar with the history of in 1911, Republic of China, currently in Taiwan, was established in 1949. People's Republic of China, PRC, was established. Now, there's an overlapping between 1911 and 1949 that whether you are mainland Chinese or Taiwanese, basically, you were during that period or under the flag of Republic of China. Now, I'd like to talk about the next slides on social dimension. Also some commonality and variation, right? Commonality, I will put it as my observation states. We are both very family-centered, community-based social structure. That is to say, even labor union in Taiwan is not really a labor union of US or European flags. It is very community-based social structure that, for example, is not confrontational between the capitalist and the laborer. It is actually it's almost like a Santa Claus giving bonus to the workers or organizing activities that create a strong sense of community. So this is a social dimension that I like to highlight as commonality. As to the variation, right? Basically, as I visited mainland China quite often before our current government's sort of restrictions, basically I observe a strong sense of nationalism vis-a-vis currently in Taiwan. Our social divide is quite deep in my observation between cross-strait unification as a future goal, despite of the fact that we have lots of different approaches how to achieve there. The divide between unification and the so-called Taiwan independence. So this is a social dimension. And that kind of divide, I believe, somewhat give Taiwan a very distorted sense of community. Now, I would also touch upon a little bit about youth morale. As I go to east, west, south, north of mainland China, there's some very vivid picture that I observe is in their young people, or if I can say academia elite, they have a very forward-looking, upbeat spirit in terms of their future, the nation. Whereas in Taiwan, I observe that most of the young people pursue some trivial sense of little pleasure, not too much of a direction about their future. Now, I also like to talk a little bit about aging society, right? Now, both sides of the strait have a phenomena of aging society. In mainland China, perhaps due to the fact of one-child policy restriction, and then all of a sudden they feel that the population at large would require more young people rather than the consuming social welfare system of the aging society. So they have lifted the one-child policy. Whereas in Taiwan, for some reason, women here don't feel that they are comfortable or have the luxury of many children. Therefore, it's a growing childless society. Whereas at the same time, you also observe a growing import, if I may use the term, of foreign brides, particularly mainland Chinese and Vietnamese brides are quite favorable. That's what I'd like to touch upon on social dimension. I have about 8 minutes left, so I will talk a little bit about my last slides on ways forward. So after reviewing some of the commonality and variation in the current state of the play across the strait, I'd like to mention a few issues, perhaps as a discussion point later. All right. Now, the commonality is that both sides would prefer to maintain peace and stability as much as possible. I also like to mention managing 92 consensus. 92 consensus was coined by Xi Jinping when he met up with MAN-JUNG after he met up at their meeting in Singapore as a magic cudgel, as a magic anchor. I personally use the term but cudgel is usually interpreted by mainland Chinese, is an anchor for further cross-strait relations. Whereas right now, the current government in Taiwan maintain that 92 consensus is outdated and a passé. Therefore, somewhat deny the fact that the term 92 consensus is significant at all, although President Tsai did not deny the fact that in 1992, there was a historical moment across the strait, a historical fact. Now, I also like to touch upon a little bit about ECFA, Economic Cooperation Framework Agreement, that I mentioned earlier. So now that we have a 92 consensus as the anchor for everything, cross-strait relations. So what happened now if it is being denied? Currently, generally speaking, every favor contained in the ECFA special treatment, both sides remains. However, with somewhat of irritation, one way or another, and an increasing tension across the strait. Basically, mainland Chinese has also a different approaches. I think there has been debates going on in terms of how to handle the current situation, mainly Tsai's government vis-a-vis MAN-JUNG's government. So the general sentiment is as such, although it is not implemented to the bottom. That is, you cannot have the cake and eat it too. So on the one hand, you enjoy all the special favorite treatment by mainland Chinese. However, you earn the money, go back to Taiwan and sponsor Taiwan independence movement. Therefore, there is a fine line as to how do we do with ECFA. On the one hand, we want Taiwanese people to have a heart-to-heart relationship with us. A sort of tentative disruption on ECFA may nurture negative sentiment toward mainland China. So I believe that is somewhat of a dilemma on their mindset. On the other hand, Taiwan always maintained the so-called status quo in disguise in certain area and status quo in another, perhaps a lot of variation and detour. So the current government basically maintains the so-called status quo and say, keep it as long as it lasts in terms of ECFA. Now, I would like to come to my last point, given the time constraint. Cross-strait exchange. From mainland China's perspective, it is welcome as long as one abandons Taiwan independence movement. We don't care about your past, but as long as you change your position and abandon that independence movement, all exchange in the cultural, economic, political, academia are all welcome. Now, from the Taiwan's perspective, right, I mentioned earlier, our political parties also have some variations, right? One more thinking in terms of building consensus toward an adventure, no matter how long it will take. It's non-specific in terms of duration, as long as there's a future unification. Whereas there are also these talk about preconditions, right? the precondition for us to talk to mainland China or maintain exchange is, for example, some Taiwanese maintain, for them to change to a democratic system like ours. I shall end up here, and then if there's further comments, I will welcome them. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Chan. That was a very insightful and thought-provoking presentation. It's comprehensive as it covers various dimensions, talking about the areas of convergence and divergence. Now, we proceed to our next presenter or speaker for this morning. It's Dr. FU-KUO, and he has a PhD in politics from the University of Hull. He's a research fellow at the Institute of International Relations and professor at the International Doctorate Program in Asia Pacific Studies, College of Social Science at the National Chungcheong University. Let us welcome Dr. Liu.
Good morning. Thank you so much for invitation. I'm so delighted together with my colleagues, Dr. Mignon, to have such an honor to make a presentation to such a distinguished and elite intellectuals in the Philippines. And I always consider we are so close neighbor, but we haven't really done much exchange and communication before. So I also like to thank especially to Dr. Romel Banahoe for his keen interest to encourage and facilitate such a valuable intellectual exchange between the Philippines and Taiwan. And I think, I hope this today's webinar will be a fruitful and useful exchange between our both sides. And I'm pretty sure that later on we can invite or arrange more intellectuals to learn and share with our distinguished friends from the Philippines. So it happens that today, with this fixed topic to talk about the cross-strait relations. And I'm so delighted my dear colleagues, Dr. Mignon has just made such a presentation, which lately we both have been busy. We haven't really conducted coordination, but it happens that the natural division of labor has been made. And I will not overlap much with her presentation. And I hope both of us in the time frames roughly around 1 hour would be able to share and also reflect much of a complicated issue across the Taiwan Strait. So mainly my concentration will be on foreign policy, cross-strait policy, and more related to security dimension, which make the natural division of labor with Dr. Mignon. I think the long history, since all of you, I have attended some meeting before with your association. I learned many of you are really working on the field and also know a lot. So I thought when I prepare this presentation, I think it will be better not to overlap or maybe moving on to more historic part. So basically all the presentation will be limited the time frame after mostly 2000s. And I will not cover much of the ground before the year of 2000. But as always, the cross-strait relations is overshadowed by the US-China competition, especially after President Donald Trump was in power. And such a tense, the level of tense competition rise up much further. So in this sense, the cross-strait relations, I shouldn't say it's suffering, but I think it's moving onto a much more dangerous level. So as all of you understand, even under the current president, Joe Biden, his administration has already set clear guidelines to engage with China, confrontation, conflict, and cooperation. But whether or on what specific fields the US and China would be able to work together. And it all depends on their discussion and their definition. But currently, the move between Beijing and Washington is not that well. So as you can see, a number of high-level dialogue, official dialogue, ends with criticism and no any clear message, positive message, even if both of government tries to cool down media criticism to each others. But I think mostly confrontation and conflict remains a large part of their relations for now. But I am not sure, as the war is fast changing, the Afghan debacle may force the United States to make something otherwise. So this would be something from very beginning. I thought the competition has already seriously overshadowed the cross-strait relations. The second point, China and Russia, of course, in a way to compete and fighting against the United States, both countries already tied up their relations and further tightening their strategic partnership, not just working on all dimensions of policy, but also they conduct joint military exercise whenever the US in the last few months conducted military exercise with Japan, Korea, and in the South China Sea with allies countries, even including Australia, United Kingdom, France, and also India, and later in the months, Germany will be also joining together. So this is the external environment for Taiwan. I think overall, as Dr. John mentioned clearly, the current situation in the Taiwan Strait is not that good, and I can use, if not completely hostile, I think it's not. It's on the discord, because later I will elaborate a little bit more to all of you, and of course, standing in between the U.S. and China, Taiwan issue. Of course, a cross-strait issue, Hong Kong protests, Xinjiang human rights, and also including South China Sea issue. These issues are playing up in between US and China. Of course, as a result, such a high level and also tense competition between the two major countries, which force Taiwan in between in such a difficult situation. And I realize not just Taiwan, but also a number of countries in the region, the Philippines, Vietnam, and others are also standing in between the US and China. And Taiwan, I think we have a special relations with mainland China. We are even more difficult comparing with the massive size of China today. And our economic high independence on China market make Taiwan even more vulnerable vis-a-vis China. So this is overall our external environment. So the next, talking about such an impact on the cross-strait relations, especially lately. US-China intensifying competition weakens rationale of a better cross-strait relations, not just because domestically, I would address a little bit to the second and third point. I think in between US and China, as the competition is intensified, the US approached Taiwan and helped Taiwan and lift up the level of collaboration. And it would, of course, solve the relations with China and also directly challenges the relations with China. So we are saying this has been for long, US, China, Taiwan, we always think as a trilateral relations playing up between US and China. So currently, I found that this, as a result, weakens further the rationale for better cross-strait relations. But I think lately, it is not, I think it is not viewed from the United States. Sometimes you can see that the policy from the United States contradicts itself. So a lot of things are reflected in the cross-strait relations and also in between US and China. I will elaborate a little bit later. Taiwan domestically, DPP government currently clearly made the selection strategically side with the United States and Japan for various reasons. Currently, as Dr. MIGNONNE mentioned, after 2016, our current president, Tsai Ing-wen, was in power. Then the relations already completely cut off comparing with the earlier government. Taiwan and China, or at that time had much cozy relations. Even the cross-strait official channel were already made in a multiple level of communication. So this was the better time before the DPP government. But I think strategically, our current government made such a selection, and they have opted to the United States. So obviously, it would even further complicate the cross-strait relations. So further on to the next point, DPP government advocates anti-China political campaign domestically. There are a number of policy, perhaps unless all of you look into the details of how those policy played up domestically, even including economic policy, social policy, labor policy, and other dimensions. All in all, we can easily feel when we are living in Taiwan, such an anti-China political campaign has been advocated much further with this current government. So since 2016 to roughly 2018, the first 2 years, Beijing was originally hoping they put on bail similarly, waiting for the Tsai administration to come into such a possible status to dialogue with China. But after 2 years, Beijing obviously reflected disappointment to our current government. So all the official channel already completely cut off. So if you are saying we are still flying, currently we still have quite a number of flights going across the Taiwan Strait. But these are all left after the previous government before 2016. But for now, except the time since last year under the pandemic alert. But I think except our general people crossing the Taiwan Strait, trade remain going on. Dr. Zhang already shared one of the significant development, even under the pandemic alert since early 2020. The trade volume between Taiwan and China hits the highest, surprisingly, even if our government trying to cut off such a trade economic links, but end up with even more. So obviously Taiwan's economy is highly depends on China market. The trade volume in 2020, if I remember clearly, currently the trade volume overall is about more than 43 to 44%. As you can imagine, close to half of Taiwan's trade to the world market. I think China almost a share close to half. So as you can imagine, this is a high economic dependence on the China market. But during this particular time, our government, looking back in the last 2 years, publicly supporting Hong Kong democratic movement, which obviously everyone understands anger China completely. So when Beijing was watching whether any moves by Taiwan's government would have any good hope for the future dialogue. But I think as a result, our government challenged such a policy in Hong Kong publicly, and even openly criticized Beijing for not respecting human rights. And obviously this is something so difficult for Taiwan and China to work together. I think good or bad, there is an assessment domestically. We can look into how far we can go from here. But another thing, my observation is, as a result, the long-time balances in our policy in Taipei is tilting toward the United States. Obviously, looking into such a US-China relations, and also our incumbent government has taken a clear strategic position, siding with the United States. So obviously, the balances, the policy balances now in Taiwan is tilting toward the US, is unbalanced at this moment. So once these balances is not working as it did in the past, the tension in the Taiwan Strait automatically rise up further, and the security concern is obviously is something we have to bear in mind. So the next, I would quickly come to the perspective of the major parties in the cross-strait definition. The parties, including perhaps I should use stakeholders. The US has for long setting up such a guidelines from the United States, looking into the relations with China and Taiwan. The official documents, which is One China policy. I have to mention the wording is very different. The United States is using One China policy instead of a principle. So, which means that if this is a policy, the substance and the subtlety will be defined clearly by the United States government, not by China. But obviously, similar to One China principle, but obviously from the United States standpoint, One China policy is subject to Americans' definition. And more importantly, the relations regulating US and China for now is a One China policy, and together with 3 communiques. So that was starting from 1979, when they formally moving into diplomatic recognition thereafter. And also 1972, Shanghai Communique, for the first time, they sit down and work on the common interest, and later on during the Reagan administration, signed further on the following communique. So these are the almost Bibles in between the US and China. So Donald Trump, in the last few years, under his term, from Beijing's standpoint, Donald Trump is breaking such a regulation, which already regulates for 40 some years relations between the US and China. But of course, in between these trilateral relations, for Taiwan is more important. When we segregate the relations with the United States back in 1979, there was a Taiwan Relations Act. Of course, this is a domestic American law, but it regulates the US government's responsibilities for Taiwan's survival. So since then on, as long as One China policy plus 3 communiques and Taiwan Relations Act can fine-tuned the relations among 3 will be balanced. But I think since especially Donald Trump, these balances already tilting toward one dimension. So this is a reason why Beijing is not happy to the United States. But inside this policy, the second point is also very important. The US for all time insists on no any unilateral change to the status quo, which means that Taiwan cannot unilaterally plan to go to Taiwan independent, changing the status quo, and also prevent China to change the status quo, which means March military invasion against Taiwan. So with the United States drawing the red line, so both sides for now cannot really cross this red line. But of course, the bottom line is the PLA cannot compete or challenge the United States military. But what if in the near term, PLA is stronger enough to challenge US military? Then such a principle set down by the United States may be in the new situation to be challenged. So the first, the new development now, the US government looking into such a tension in the Taiwan Strait, mostly encourage Taiwan to find a way to dialogue, exchange a view with Beijing. But as you can imagine, listen to Dr. Zhang's presentation earlier, you will note even if from this year, May, Biden administration, I think Secretary of State Blinken, and also our friend Kurt Campbell already publicly appear to our government, encourage conducting cross-strait dialogue, but our president already appeared to Beijing. Taiwan is ready anytime to go to peaceful dialogue, but of course, no any response judging from the current sour relations. Beijing completely neglect such possibilities, but quickly look into China's perspective on the cross-strait. And of course, Dr. Zhang already mentioned 1992 consensus, which based on One China principle, but of course, subject to, of course, they also link with One China principle linked with one country, two systems. And this is a Chinese version, which is very different from Taiwan's perspective. Currently, as originally developed this 1992 consensus by the opposition party, now KMT, and already there was a history back in 1992, but our current government, DPP, completely reject the 1992 consensus and deny One China principle. This is a political implication, but the story goes on and on. This is currently in Taiwan on this 1992 consensus does not have a consensus domestically, because people who support the DPP government reject this consensus, but others people think that 1992 consensus is a part of a diplomatic effort between Taiwan and China. We need to follow on to this, but currently, according to the propaganda from our government, 1992 consensus is not prevailing supported by younger generation. As you can imagine, domestically, our government made a tremendous politicization. So young generation does not think that this is a part of something we have to honor too. So it also makes the future much more complicated between China and Taiwan. So One China under KMT definition, this has been existed for over 30, almost 30 years. Next year will be 30. So the different interpretation from Beijing, One China principle is under the structure of PRC, but from our standpoint, this is under the standpoint of Republic of China. But there was an understanding between Beijing and Taipei. Domestically, we can argue different interpretation, but unfortunately, in the international community, this different interpretation has not been or will not be accepted by Beijing at all. So this is something difficult. We complained to Beijing for the last 20-some years. Beijing is looking into internally, externally, they are interpreted differently. We are not happy with that, of course. But I also listed another party, the third party, the new party in Taiwan, Taiwan People's Party, which as always we look into because the chairman of this party was a medical doctor. So he wears the white suit always, so we consider this party as white. And this party so far has not defined clearly how it looks into the cross-strait policy. But basically, it encourages cooperation and also will not object working with China. But I think I need to look down quickly how Trump's breaking the diplomatic normal. And many people said Donald Trump was just like a bull charging into porcelain shops and breaking a lot of values, and including this diplomatic norm, which we have been educated, we have been learning for decades. But obviously under his administration, you cannot simply follow this guideline or the normal. Something perhaps we shouldn't say new normal by Donald Trump. But I think under his administration, unprecedentedly, under his administration and also during that time, the Congress passed 5 new acts. We called it Taipei Travel Act, Taipei Act, and also Assurance Act, Taiwan International Participation Act, and Taiwan Defense Act. All in all, it's changing the relations and regulation between the US and Taiwan. I think I simply make the one to all of you. Before Donald Trump, there was a blacklist blocking 5 leaders from Taiwan. Our president, vice president, prime minister, minister of defense, minister of foreign affairs cannot travel inside the Beltway. So that was the intangible blacklist. But I think Donald Trump, during his term, made this law, Taiwan Travel Act, which legally allows these blacklists to be released. But of course, so far, officially, we haven't heard whether we have scheduled such a visit. And from the standpoint, after this law passed, Donald Trump already signed on this law. The United States, if he wishes, he can visit Taiwan according to domestic law. So it is completely changing the legal framework between the US and Taiwan. But of course, the US government would have to always assess whether such a diplomatic effort would anger China and sour or maybe complicate the relations between the US and China. But at that time, simply to say the US government is promoting the level of US-Taiwan bilateral relations and trying to getting rid of institutional school of bilateral relation, the China, Taiwan, and US relations. So this is unprecedented, but of course, Biden administration mostly is following the track of Donald Trump. And of course, more significantly, more arms sales to Taiwan during Donald Trump's time. So let me move faster. So under Biden's policy now toward the cross-strait relation, he is here only for 8 months. He is trying to deter China from advancing militarily. So the big story, I do not need to say, Biden is mobilizing all the alliances and support from international community to deter China. And second point, also reminds, very importantly, Biden on the one side supporting Taiwan, involving international participation, but at the same time also reminds our government the US will not support Taiwan independence. And the third, his administration also encourages bilateral dialogue, easing the tension, but obviously it doesn't work at this moment. So our current government's China policy, I think it's very interesting to look into the wordings between Taiwan and China. When KMT is saying the cross-strait relations, KMT always use MAN-JUNG policy, while DPP look China as a different political entity. He said China is China, nothing to do with Taiwan. So the policy is a China policy, similar to the Philippines and Japan and others. So basically, DPP is rejecting 1992 consensus, deviating away from cozy relations, of course. And the second, after May 2016, President Tsai Ing-wen was in power. From then on, all the official contact and the mechanism completely cut off. And I remember before May 2016, the former government under President Ma-Ying-jeou was almost discussing, negotiating, setting up a liaison office in mainland China and some in Taiwan. So it's like a British community setting up a high commission office in individual countries. But unfortunately, DPP in power, this opportunity is completely disappearing. So internally, DPP is conducting the sinicization policy, drifting further. So what Dr. MIGNONNE was describing, such a policy, and also our people, general people with Chinese general people, we have a similarity. But as a result, further down the road, in the next perhaps a few decades, our DPP government is completely changing the cultural mindset, which they have already changed the textbook for primary school, middle school, and high school textbook. So as you can imagine, young generation receive a different cultural education. Later on, they do not consider China as something that related to their fate in the future. So of course, economically, ECFA, Dr. MIGNONNE already shared, this has been a significant FTA across the Taiwan Strait, but unfortunately, this act agreement already pending in our parliament has not been approved. So already 11 years on, and I think Beijing also showed its tolerance, has not completely or automatically canceled the agreement signed back in 2010, but just waiting for favorable time to move on. And I just personally, I just hope ECFA matter a lot to Taiwan's economic fate. We definitely need to move on with the direction. But I think our current government thinks this something differently. So President Tsai frequently appears to Beijing for peaceful dialogue, which Beijing rejects outright. And I'm not sure, at least by her term, the end of her term around May 24, I do not have such an optimistic picture whether the Cross-Strait dialogue were resumed. So basically, let me perhaps jump over to the final pages. The main factor charging the hostile cause, if I may, after these past few years, cross-strait relations is now very much onto hostile status. So since last year, from time to time, and quite frequently, I'm not sure in Manila, in Taipei, lately, sometimes in the summer, almost every day, there is an alarm coming in. PLA's Air Force sending their fighters and other type of aircraft flying across into our ADIZ and surrounding Taiwan Strait. So this is a security alert. And so it shows to me such a military operation is more sending up strong political hostile message to our government. But others may think a military threat, but personally, I do think political implication is much larger than political implication. And of course, the message is also sending to American government. So Taiwan's DPP government chose for independent for now, internally and externally. Obviously, Beijing understands our current government is completely moving on to independent, which they have increased such alarms in their decision-making process. So it comes to the second part. Everyone knows next year, Xi Jinping will be moving on to his third term. But as a Chinese people, we understand Xi Jinping, before he can be confirmed moving on to the third term, unprecedentedly as a president of the PRC, he needs to do something historic achievement. For now, everyone believes unified Taiwan would be something he need to conquer such a difficulty. So if he can make his status much further beyond President Mao Zedong, and I think he will be respected by all Chinese people. This is his mindset and his policy. So we are, of course, worrying. And there are a lot of warning from American think tanks and also different government agency, reminding Taiwan that China is almost preparing to launch a military invasion against Taiwan in the next few years. Some said just around the time when Xi Jinping moving into the third term. So this is something making this hostile feeling much higher in between Taiwan and China. So the final point, US policy complicates the cross-strait invasion further. And I should say, for now, the US policy is tightening up relations with Taiwan. So we are very much in the difficult position. I'm not sure in the Philippines. I also studied the situation in the Philippines. We have a different concern and different perception, but I think we are pretty much similar in between US and China. So as a result, economically, Taiwan is almost over dependence upon China market, but at the same time, security-wise, Taiwan is over dependence upon the United States security support. So we are in such a difficult situation. So uncertainty for Taiwan and also great challenge lying ahead. So I just hope Dr. MIGNONNE and I, after our presentation, offer enough food of thought, and we welcome remarks and comments, and of course a question. We also very much like to learn our closest neighbor, how you think of such a big challenge. Once again, I'd like to thank for this opportunity, and I look forward to engaging more. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Liu, for that very insightful and, well, of course, this the presentation of Dr. Liu is focused more on the security and diplomacy aspects. No? And now we will be opening the floor for questions. No? And we have already several questions here in the chat box area. So if you have questions, you may please enter your questions there. And then we will be reading them out for our speakers to, resource speakers to respond to. Now, the first question we have here is, what is your opinion on the argument that mainland China is pursuing a gradualist tactic by slowly eroding Taiwanese sovereignty through diplomatic and economic means? Rather than use force, China is applying a salami slicing strategy that is cutting things thinly but consistently in its efforts to control Taiwan. Yeah, so yeah, I guess that's one of the questions. And then maybe I'll just read a set of questions and then the speakers can respond. And then for the speakers, what can you comment on the so-called 2035 deadline reported by the Chinese media? I think this is related to the plan, you know, by 2035 of a new socialist or a modern China by the CPC. And it stirs discussion among Chinese netizens where the China railway network expansion includes Taipei on 2035. I think Professor Liu already mentioned this briefly, but how do you calculate the risk of China taking military action towards Taiwan? So these are the first three questions, and may we invite Dr. Liu and Dr. Chan to, if they can respond to these questions. Thank you.
Okay, Dr. Chang, do you like to go first? Lady first, please.
All right. I sort of, during the time I was listening to Dr. FU-KUO Liu, I answer the questions I could see from my screen. Basically, I feel that China, PRC, just as any other country, could set a target date for themselves to achieve any goals. Like in the case of Taiwan, our citizens during the ECFA era also, we have a very substantive debate on whether it is too fast, too slow, or just right. So I think I have nothing to comment about China's goal setting and then the items within their goals. As to the military action that I saw from the screen, basically, I believe it is a very, very volatile situation that it will depend on the wisdom of both sides, whether you are risking to maximize or minimize the risk. This FU-KUO will know much better than I do. But in our old Chinese classic in military usage, whether it's in Sun Zi Binghua or sort of strategies book like Gui Gu Zi, the military action is never been anticipated by the enemy, so to speak. So it is very difficult to predict or just to sit on the side and say, oh, that's not going to happen. You always stay alert, and then it could happen any minute. So I just like to answer this question this way. As to another question, I think it is about changing US-Taiwan, I'm sorry, let me just read a little bit. Okay. Hong Kong, okay. Right. I must say that FU-KUO is absolutely right in his presentation. US is a big dependent factors in the whole cross-strait relations, inevitably. These triangular relations, the distance, if we can put it US, China, and Taiwan, it's uneven. And it all depends on the leadership style, personality, and their wisdom, how to balance these three in a very, everybody goes home and then be happy about the outcome. And it's still very volatile. Let me just put it here.
Okay, I would take a few questions. Thank you for such thoughtful questions. The first one, talking about Beijing's salami slice strategy against Taiwan, shrinking Taiwan's sovereignty and further international participation. I think this is an immediate threat to Taiwan. I think lots of debate going on in Taiwan. I think as one of the intellectuals in Taiwan, I feel quite unfortunately saying this because current debate in Taiwan is very much only one dimension only, which favored our incumbent government, cut off any possibility with China. So things I sometimes discuss with our friends from Manila, and since we are security students, and also perhaps looking into more strategies perspective, and everything talking about the things, I sometimes feel that our government is too much onto the current issue, harboring with the such differences, and as always, we need to really take such a strategy perspective, looking beyond those tiny issues, trouble both sides, because we are very different from mainland Chinese political system. So we do not need to always challenge or criticize the differences and causing tremendous problems. So when Beijing strikes back, and obviously they are currently using a salami slice strategy, they really do not need to launch such a large scale of military against Taiwan. I think they are gradually peeling apart during President Tsai Ing-wen's term since 2016. We have already lost 7 or 8 diplomatic allies. So further down the road, we currently have only 15 diplomatic airlines left. But I think if I'm saying, since we are all intellectuals in our own society, I would rather look at a much higher level, looking into strategies and perspective. And we need to ask a simple question: how we might be able to prevent or even stop such a salami slice strategy. Basic point is if we can change the course of our engagement with China, obviously not immediately sacrificing our right and everything, but at least we can stop such a negative progress further down the road. And I shouldn't expect such a pessimistic development under such a current strategy. Internationally, shrink down further, our sovereignty obviously has been affected. So unfortunately, our government is fighting so strong, never thinks of more strategically, skillfully engaging with our biggest counterpart outside. So as a result, if the current course goes further from both sides, obviously this is a very pessimistic course. So we understand, even if you may not see such a policy elaborated in the media, but I can assure you that we have a big number of clever people which are not inside the government, frequently advise to the government. But I think this is a party line. The government is charging on to this hostile strategy. And I think perhaps it also, as you can imagine, in my presentation, I especially mentioned the US role in the cross-strait relations. Currently, especially after Donald Trump's administration, now into Biden administration. You and us completely know that current public opinion in the United States is fighting against China as their #1 policy priority. Good or bad, we are not the United States. We should have our second options, but our government just completely side with the US fighting against China. US is a superpower. Taiwan is a small power. If we are following the footsteps of the United States, Taiwan will be in the middle, much into a very difficult situation. But I think this is something I also perhaps, as you are asking, let me see, you are asking this critical question. Perhaps you have already had your thoughts. Perhaps you can also share a little bit of your wisdom with us. The second question related to these 2035 deadlines, which we have heard so much, even under President MAN-JUNG earlier. The Chinese business community already come up with this ambitious infrastructure plan connecting the Taiwan Strait Channel Tunnel to connect to Taipei. But I think this is for the good or for the bad, worse. On the best positive part, I should say this is absolutely wonderful idea. But of course, judging from political differences, everyone in Taiwan will not welcome communist rule. So this is something also dilemma for Taiwan. But I think Xi Jinping on this note, mentioning deadline 2035, he also emphasized this would be the time PLA completely moving on to modernize modern military. So I shouldn't say this. There will be still some leave rooms for Taiwan and also perhaps the United States. We need to really well prepare until then, which means perhaps PLA would get much closer to US military in the next 40-some years. I think this would be a warning sign. I hope until the time, because if such a ground strategy or ambitious infrastructure project would be able to connect Taipei and Beijing, that would be under stabilized political situation. I do think that until then, most of Taiwanese people would be supportive to the idea, but not for now, because we are also worrying about such a authoritarian political regime. And this is something we cannot accept in this democratic society. So let me also quickly respond to one of the questions talking about military action taken, perhaps a plan to be taken by China. I think we have living, I think in my generation or younger generation, we have lived under such a military threat, the shadow of a military threat for decades. We understand something may be coming, but something should not be coming. So for our duty, we need to work on strategic thinking, how to engage with China, deter them not to sending out the military. But of course, all in all, we also need to upgrade our military or modernize our defense capabilities, because you cannot just get rid of your military modernization process by simply counting on economic and political forces. This will not be the ideal part for Taiwan. I think we need to work on both ends, since our military comparing with PLA is much weaker and also not so meaningful for PLA to launch. So we have a lot of front to work. So the urgent issue for now is we need to upgrade our military modernization. but at the same time, we also need to work with the United States and other friendly and allies country in the region in time of a crisis. So these are something we have work and also moving on to. But I just hope not moving on to something intensify our conflict with China. Thank you.
Thank you for your responses. Now we go to the next set of questions, and I think the responses relating to the U.S. Preface this set of questions. For example, the elevation of U.S.-Taiwan relations in recent years raised concerns about Beijing retaliating not so much against the U.S., but rather on Taiwan. Do you think there is a link between changing U.S.-Taiwan relations and increasing diplomatic isolation of Taiwan, and Beijing opposing even informal ties by other countries with Taipei? How is Taiwan coping with that? Another question would be, and in relation to that, while the number of countries that officially recognizes Taiwan may be shrinking, the substance of Taiwan's relation with key partners like US and Japan are expanding and deepening. Is this part of Taiwan's diplomatic strategy, recognizing that it may not be able to prevent Beijing from flipping its remaining diplomatic allies? And then lastly, for this set of questions, maybe given the developments in Afghanistan, how would US withdrawal from and abandonment of Afghanistan affect the credibility and reliability of the US as a defense partner for Taiwan? Yeah, so so those are the questions. Quite heavy. I feel these are quite heavy questions. So
well, I will
Dr. Chan.
a few very briefly so that my colleague will have time to respond as well. Regarding the both sides' wisdom, I personally have positive, more optimistic view. I think both sides wants to minimize the event of use of force. Now, regarding Afghanistan, there are many debates among our community, newspapers and otherwise, about the effect of Afghanistan and US credibility, etc. I must say that there are divergent views, right? Some look at Afghanistan and Taiwan's cross-strait relations are totally different phenomena. Let me just put it this way. When Shanghai Communique was signed, was Kissinger's underground shuttle diplomacy. Nobody knows what's going on. And Jiang Jingguo, our president at that time, only, I understand, about 2 hours or so beforehand, before the Shanghai Communique, he was notified. So I like to mention the very fact that big power relationship is not anticipated by many side of the two bilateral US-China relations. From time to time, I feel that Taiwan sometimes is ignorant, that we feel that we can be a chess player rather than a pawn. When the negotiation chips were built up to a certain extent, and the red line that the big power knows fully where it stands, and the small country like Taiwan were missing the point altogether. Whether it's Lithuanian or any other country. I hear a lot of academic comments in Taiwan that if the US really supporting Taiwan, why don't US just recognize Taiwan instead of supporting Lithuanian to have diplomatic relations with Taiwan? So, you know, we have to be putting in a realistic note in terms of what this is part of the process, or this is a sustainable outcome, right? Now, Taiwan's government's refusal to accept China's made vaccine, that is very unfortunate. And again, we have top-down policy decision process as well as bottom-up, as I mentioned earlier, a hybrid of decision-making, given the fact that we are a democratic society. So this has aroused quite a lot of tug of war between the government and the charity foundation and whatnot, in terms of purchasing vaccine when Taiwan is most in need. What are the current efforts, engagement in response to Indo-Pacific strategy of US vis-a-vis New Southbound policy? I don't know whether I should wait for the chairman to call on my name or I think I will stop here until the chairman has some direction.
Dr. Liu.
Okay, thank you. I would very much agree, especially with regard to this question, saying that U.S.-Taiwan's elevation, the relations is elevated further. And as a result, Taiwan is now suffering further. China is taking much stronger and forceful effort to clean up Taiwan's diplomatic allies in the international community. I do think the answer to the question here is very positive because there is a direct relations. Because on the one side, the U.S. is helping Taiwan, doing a lot efforts. But I should say in the as we are discussing this intellectual knowledge, and the U.S. are currently losing lots of credibility in the international community, and especially during Trump's era. Now, through the process, Trump is not doing precedented or conventional diplomatic policy or effort, and anger a lot of allies, and of course, including China. While Donald Trump was trying very hard to push and pump up relations and helping Taiwan. In terms of diplomatic recognition, I don't think it is easier to increase any diplomatic recognition from all over the countries here. Of course, ideally, we just hope our government can find good tunes in between the US and China. But in reality, as Dr. Zhang in her presentation, and also I touch upon briefly, the domestic feeling now here is our DPP ruling party, for the first time in the history, almost dominate not just the executive part, which is the government, but also including legislative part. Currently, the ruling party has a very comfortable majority in our parliament, legislative yuan, unlike the time earlier under former President Chen Shui-bian. He was living with a minority party, even if the government is a DPP, but the legislative yuan was dominated by KMT. But for the first time, DPP is in the government as well as in the legislative yuan. So such a political support is overwhelming. So we have a lot of domestic criticism against our president and government now, because what we see as friends from the Philippines already clearly sees through such dangers. If you push further along the line together with the US, we will be preparing to suffer further with fewer diplomatic recognition. But if I don't think it would be easy to recover. I shouldn't say this, but I think in the realistic world, it is not so easy and also so difficult to gain extra diplomatic recognition. But unfortunately, our ruling party, especially politicians, do not think the way as you and I consider such a dangerous. So this will be moving on to the direction further. And Lucio Pitlow also mentioned Lithuania lately, but I think this is unofficial relations, just setting up a trade office, and China already responded in such a way. I think this obviously shows that Xi Jinping's government would do whatever they can to cut off all the opportunity when Taiwan can work closely with the United States. So the upstream, if the origin would be US and China relation, unless US and China can peacefully sit down working on certain issue for cooperation, perhaps gradually the things will move on to more positive front. And I just hope our policy will not pushing much further on this front. Otherwise, Taiwan will always suffer. The second question, I also share with the question the person asked, Taiwan's DPP government would be better to refrain from provoking China further. I think ideally, as we are working on the policy front, as always, we would recommend we need to be more skillfully. I think sometimes we ask our government to look into Manila, how your government deal with China, and also working with the United States. And perhaps we need to always have a double hand strategy, working both ends with China and the United States together. But I should report to our friends in Manila, our government does not think such a way. Perhaps currently, already in the last almost 6 years, five some years, working on the hostile attitude, and it will not be easy. And I don't see, even at least from what I analyze Chinese information, China will not be easy to accept even if our government change their course, because from the bottom line, our government reject 1992 consensus, which cannot agree to the proposal of one China principle and also one China two system. Beijing consider DPP government is something other than the same family. So as long as they define on this status, there is no common ground for current government in Taipei and Beijing to discuss anything further. So on this note, I think the development is more pessimistic. I just hope that it will not further provoke into a conflict or the like. And finally, I will touch upon quickly, Dr. Zhang already reflected her concern. I agree that the Afghan debacle by the Biden administration is really serious, even if the American government for now trying to tone down such a damage. And I should think that because we are not the media, we are not the government officials, we are really telling the reality and truth we can share. I should say this is something very serious, not just for the United States, but for all the friends of the United States, because this is something the US government is making the worse for themselves. And I don't think, unfortunately, our American airlines does not, as always, have such a long-term planning and long-term strategy. So they are more charging on to short-term strategy, looking into what they can solve the issue. So Biden administration is trying to solve this short-term issue, bring American homes. So politically, domestically, all American will support, but externally, American is sacrificing all. And I think American is losing even more than what it gets from domestic core. So talking about the credibility, with this development, I'm sure many countries in the region or in the Middle East would have a second thought whenever future they can make something related to the United States, even if for now, most of the government will not say this so bluntly to the outside world and also to the US. But I think gradually every government, I'm pretty sure that even including my government, would have a second thought. Officially, our government will say that follow on the message sent out by the White House. But I think domestically, we understand there is something we need to review even more seriously. We need to get ourselves prepared. We should not be the one like Afghanistan in the future. So I'm not saying that Taiwan is worrying about the United States credibility and also it's a promise to defending Taiwan in the future. But what I'm saying is everyone, including our friends in the Philippines, we always need to take this as a serious consideration for our future policy options. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Liu. The next set of questions, I think, focus on two things. First, about the ordinary people. How do they view this? And one of the questions here is saying that there's an increasing negative view of the ordinary Taiwanese people towards China. Well, of course, this is the assumption of the question. I would probably rephrase it and ask, is there such negative view of the ordinary Taiwanese people towards China? And then the second aspect of, or the second question would be related to the pandemic. So how has the pandemic changed the diplomatic landscape between Taiwan and China? And what is the impact on their relationship? Segueing towards to the earlier question on the vaccines, the China-made vaccines. So probably we can ask Dr. Chan to first give her comments and then Dr. Liu.
All right, let me just put it this way. MAN-JUNG Affairs Council every year conducted the public opinion. It is important for them to conduct this public opinion because supposedly US will base on the outcome of the poll to decide where they stance on Taiwan policy or cross-strait policy. So I often advise my friends who ask the same questions, just look at the outcome as with a grain of salt, because they are concerned about Taiwanese identity. Are you a Chinese? Are you a Chinese in Taiwan? Are you both a Chinese and Taiwanese? I mean, all these identity issues become a sort of poll outcome becomes so essential. I've attended many social grouping in the internet. And of course, there's certain type of grouping probably will not invite me in. I would say that it's pretty volatile. It's a wide spectrum of people's view. That's why I try to pinpoint social divide within Taiwan, right? As to the real scenario, I don't think I can get it from the media report on the general poll, all right? And then secondly, I'd like to also bring back to the question about anti-secession law. Anti-secession law made by the PRC was purely targeting on foreign forces that interfere in the cross-strait relations. So there was a question earlier regarding, against Taiwanese, not against the US. I'm not quite sure that I would agree to that. In terms of Indo-Pacific strategy that's initiated by Japan and orchestrated by US and Australia now, India is having a neutral position and sometimes at times putting forth in the public statement here and there. But overall, current Taiwanese government feels that as long as we sort of highlight a little bit about Indo-Pacific strategy, here was the, particularly in the US cooperation, in sort of rescue team, in the maritime security, for maritime security, and so on. They feel that it's a good thing to do. Now, New Southbound policy is being actively pursued by the government. And due to the COVID, also that put a store on this particular policy advancement. But overall, yes, these two policies, Indo-Pacific strategy as well as New Southbound policy, is still upheld by the government. Now, in terms of people's attitude, yeah, I think I responded like that. Over to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Dr. Liu. Maybe about the COVID, if you have comments. I think your, Dr. Liu, your microphone is still off.
Right. Okay, thank you for those thoughtful questions. I would touch upon two, especially the first one, these negative views toward China now. I can sense this is something made especially purposely by the current ruling parties in Taiwan. This is the way that further onto the future, if the party wishes to dominate the politics and also the future destiny in Taiwan, they would gradually educate and also lead the general people onto different faiths away from China. This is what the current government is trying to do. But I think the question asked quite rightly, we especially early last year when President Tsai Ing-wen went into the second re-election campaign, and as a result, the poll shows that younger generation, I think currently younger generation gradually increase such a hostile attitude toward China, and they may take a similar attitude as a Hong Kong Democratic Movement people standpoint. So this is a worrisome. I think these currently we don't have a clear answers for that because younger generation politically or in the social media, they always criticize and trying to distance themselves away from China, saying that Taiwanese are not Chinese, so they want to differentiate themselves. But on the realistic ground, quite a number of young people looking for jobs, they go to China. And I lately have a friend who during this pandemic situation, business was stagnated, and then they look for a job in China. They already left during the summertime and found a job in China. So I think we still need time to gradually digest. On the one side, people's perception, perhaps manipulated by political forces in Taiwan. As always, especially during the election campaign, especially our current government, the ruling party, always chanting for fighting against China. And so for those people who do not like the KMT, they may think that China is something we cannot touch upon. They don't want to get associated with. So gradually, more and more, and I should say that currently, the younger generation is more reflecting Dr. Zhang's presentation, Sunflower Movement, which is among 30-some and perhaps the age of 40-some. So this generation, but I think as we are gradually mature, moving into the realistic world, they will understand, like it or not, China is there. You need to work with China. So we need to really find a skillful way to engage with China. As I mentioned briefly, especially back in 2020, under such a restriction, our government barred all the Chinese travelers coming to Taiwan, and also all the facilities that they trying to cut off. But looking back in 2020, our trade volume with China increased even further. So it shows such important relations. So importantly, for Taiwanese, like it or not, you need to find a way to engage with China, to work with China, live with China. So that may be something we need to deal with for Taiwan for now. And I want to also quickly touch upon the pandemic issue. The question mentioned our government since last year, when the situation was so desperate until this, even now, we are still short of enough vaccine. Chinese government prepared to offer some Chinese-made vaccine, but our government rejected outright. I don't think this is a smart move, but of course, this is a policy option. Our government decided to move on, reject Chinese vaccine, but currently, since later part of last month, Taiwan has already developed our homemade vaccine, even if the quantity is not matching up our demands yet, because even if gradually people reaching almost a half for the first jabs, but we still have a huge gap to fill in. And originally, we thought 2 jabs may be sufficient, but now we are planning for the 3rd one. As a Delta variants are coming in, we are worrying about the government is preparing. But for now, fortunately, our business community already mobilized their resources, especially the #1 manufacturers in the world, Foxconn, together with TSMC and also with Tzu Chi Foundation, Buddhist charity foundation. Altogether, they procure 15 million jabs from Pfizer. So starting from this week, the vaccines already rolling into the market, and I think our people from this week preparing, lining up for BNT vaccines. So it also reflects such a, I think, the policy when our government reject outright from Chinese support. I think it also reject the olive trees from Beijing. I think for our policy advisor like us all, if we were showing our benign attitude, at least we would send a good note without accepting. At least we should say we are so appreciative to their support and whatever, blah and blah. But I think our government just say no and said the vaccines are not reliable, not trustable. So I think in a way, rejecting our government further anger China for that. So I don't think this is a smart move. But of course, from very beginning last year, China suddenly plunged into Wuhan's challenge, blocking all the national borders. Our government immediately responded likewise. And also when at that time, face mask, Taiwan, we are not that short of a face mask, but at least we at that time, another corner in our society suggested to the government, we should send our perhaps a concern to such a people, and we at least donate 1 million or so of face masks to show our concern as a family members. But our government reject and also block all the manufacturers exporting face masks to China. So once again, these are not so clever move, because with these attitudes, including rejecting vaccine, already stated quite clearly, this government in Taiwan thinks that China is another thing. So we are the family here. We are not a part of the family together across the Taiwan Strait. So a lot of rooms to be thought of, good or bad, some of the people supporting our government. But I think more people in our society think if we would be more clever and smarter, we could have end up with something not we have now with these very tense relations and also hostile relations with China. So this is something I can offer for now related to the vaccine. Thank you. I think Jade, your signal may not be stable, so I cannot hear.
Well, I'd like to pick up the question on supply chain connectivity and the decoupling that the US is attempting to do via trade war, currency war, technology war, and whatnot. And I think it's detrimental to the whole regional and global supply chain connectivity. Taiwan's cream of the pie, sort of crown jewel, TSMC, for example, in the high-tech industry, of course, also experience a lot of dilemma with this kind of US-China war on the economic front. So TSMC has decided to invest in US, in China, in Japan, in Germany. I mean, as a private company, the bottom line matters. And then they cannot wait and sit for their opportunity. Now the decoupling or technology war, if I may say it, between US and China has created a lot of unease because TSMC also has investment in Nanjing. So this disruption that has costing, I believe, that will work to the detriment of the US as well as for the world. US used to be in the forefront of free trade in WTO. Now, since Donald Trump, they have everything against it. And then, for example, if US is boycotting any made in China products, the whole globalization, the web of globalization is so intertwined that everybody depends on the other. So, you know, private company will have to seek their solution if the external environment is hostile to them. That is to say, for example, China has enormous investment in India. China has enormous outbound investment in Vietnam because of the fact that US boycott made in China stuff. So how do you prevent it? I mean, this is the wisdom that all human efforts have to do, is to do problem solving or creating more problem. All right, so it's the case of Taiwan. Taiwan's companies suffer a lot because for the past 8 years during MAN-JUNG's era, we have a very, very close economic web. Now, artificially, we want to disrupt the market by saying that you're not supposed to go here or there, due to your own sense of competition, right? So the two big powers, two big economic powers, vying for for competition healthily, that is the way that we should encourage them to do. But I'm afraid that sometimes in assessing national interest with different leadership style or for a short duration of their electoral sort of the term, sometimes it tends to be short-sighted. And I think it's a regret. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Chan. Dr. Liu, do you have some comments on that?
Yes, thank you. I'm glad that supply chains has been mentioned to our discussion because this is something in this new era. Supply chain becomes geopolitical factors. And Dr. Mignon already mentioned during Trump's era, he forced TSMC to establish manufacturers in Arizona. I think, of course, the simple idea is the US is short of such chips made by TSMC, with the companies leaders in the world. And he wants all the manufacturers that can be made on the land of the United States. But I think looking from reality, the market value, because everything produced in the United States is too costly. I'm not sure whether such an idea driven by political efforts will be successfully delivered in the longer term, because to be able to make such a manufacturers successfully, this chip semiconductor, it is counted on the entire industrial clusters, not simply one company moving into a specific location. It has to move entire clusters, including leading experts, communities, and also the entire downstream and upstream suppliers. So in Taiwan, TSMC has a complete supply chain, and also the clusters developed in the northern part of Taipei and also lately in the southern part of Taiwan. So I should emphasize this supply chain issue lately as a result of the technological competition between the US and China, already combining with geopolitical competition. And as a result, US and China also overshadow Taiwan because Taiwan is in between. And it happens that TSMC and other company is the number one and number two in the semiconductor sectors. So this is a very private operation. Our government may not have much to say about TSMC's future strategy. But from my understanding, TSMC, by the way of investing in the United States and working with Japan and Germany, this company already further invests 1,000 billion in Taiwan itself. So as this has become the center of strategic competition, we need to make ourselves technologically leading in the field and also in the world to maintain such an advantage. So I'm hoping TSMC will be successful and also moving the technological gap much further, maintaining the leadership, so that by saying that it also maintained Taiwan's strategic position. So just a few days ago, I shared one piece of information. A few months ago, when Taiwan was completely short of a vaccine, and our government claimed a successful request from the United States. It donated 2.5 million Moderna vaccine to Taiwan. But just a few days ago, the company from the United States released this important information because TSMC requested sufficient vaccine from the United States. If the vaccine cannot be sent to Taiwan, it will disrupt supply chain from Taiwan. So they are reminded this is something even more urgent. They want to send a vaccine to satisfy with all the people surrounding TSMC makers. So with this, Taiwan gained 2.5 million Moderna. So thank you for this opportunity.
Okay, thank you very much. So once again, we would like to thank our resource speakers for this morning, Dr. Chan and Dr. Liu, for sharing your insights about cross-strait relations. And actually, we have covered a lot, no? From the domestic to the diplomatic aspects of these issues, no? The convergence and divergence. And we will end our webinar there because we're running out of time, and we also would like to thank our participants who have actively posed their questions, and of course we thank the Philippine Association for Chinese Studies for organizing this webinar. And thank you very much, everyone, and I hope we have a great weekend ahead. And yeah, I think it's time for lunch too, so we can eat. Okay, goodbye, and thank you, everyone. Maraming salamat. 谢谢大家.
Thank you very much, and look forward to working with you all. 谢谢。
谢谢，谢谢。
Again.
Bye bye.